Robert Duvall breaks his silence after 6 decades. There are 4 people I just couldn't stand. For more than 6 decades, Robert Duvall has stood as one of Hollywood's most respected legends, an actor known for his extraordinary talent, unwavering integrity, and unmatched professionalism. He became a symbol of dedication and artistic mastery, admired by both audiences and peers alike. Yet, behind that calm and disciplined exterior, Duvall carried emotions he had never revealed, until now. In a shocking interview that has sent ripples through the film industry, the 94-year-old Oscar-winning actor has finally broken his decades-long silence. For the first time, Robert Duvall openly named the 4 actors he couldn't stand throughout his illustrious career. These weren't just minor professional disagreements, but deep-rooted tensions that once affected productions, changed the atmosphere on set, and even altered the outcome of classic films audiences thought they knew so well. What could have caused this Hollywood legend to harbor such lasting resentment? The truth behind these names is bound to leave Hollywood stunned. "I've held my tongue for decades. I've kept my silence for decades," Duvall revealed. "But at 94, what exactly am I waiting for? It's time to tell the truth." What makes these revelations so shocking is not only their content but the man behind them. For years, Robert Duvall has been regarded as the epitome of professionalism in Hollywood, the actor who never had a bad word to say about anyone. For such a paragon of discretion to finally break his silence suggests conflicts so deep they've haunted him for decades. Prepare yourself for the raw truth behind some of cinema's most iconic collaborations, feuds so intense they hid in plain sight, beneath legendary performances watched by millions who never suspected the real animosity simmering beneath the surface. This is The Breaking Point. What finally drove Duvall to speak out, just before revealing the 4 names that have sent shockwaves through Hollywood? To understand, we must uncover what pushed this famously private actor to abandon the lifelong code of silence he had so carefully kept. According to those close to him, the trigger wasn't a single event, but a profound reflection on legacy, the kind of introspection that often comes in the final chapters of life. Robert reached a point where he could no longer accept the version of history being told about him, revealed a longtime associate who asked to remain anonymous. Over the years, Duvall had watched countless Hollywood documentaries and retrospectives twist reality, turning strained, toxic relationships into tales of friendship and creative harmony. It was a distortion he could no longer stomach. The breaking point reportedly came during a recent career tribute. Sitting in the audience, Duvall watched montage after montage of his most iconic moments, many shared with actors he had secretly despised for decades. The crowd cheered, the narrator praised extraordinary collaborations and lifelong bonds, but Duvall sat frozen, watching fiction masquerade as truth. "I listened to all that nonsense about mutual respect and teamwork," he later told his interviewer. "Meanwhile, I couldn't stop thinking about how one of those people used to deliberately step on my lines just to ruin takes, and another once tried to get me fired from what became one of my most defining roles." Now, at 94, with an Oscar on his shelf, multiple nominations, and a legacy that no one can dispute, Duvall decided it was time to let go of Hollywood's carefully crafted illusions. But his decision wasn't driven by bitterness, it was purpose. He wanted to speak for the next generation. "These young actors need to know the truth," he said quietly. "Even the most celebrated films aren't born from perfection. Sometimes, they're forged in chaos, ego, and pain." He explained that in Hollywood, great performances don't always come from great relationships. Sometimes, they emerge in spite of the worst ones. "That's the truth no one talks about," Duvall said, his tone firm and unflinching. With that, and in his typically blunt manner, he moved from reflection to revelation, naming names that sent shockwaves through an industry built on polished images and unspoken rules. And the first name he uttered left even Hollywood's most seasoned insiders speechless: Marlon Brando. "The most destructive ego I ever encountered," Duvall declared without hesitation. The impact was immediate. Brando, the man hailed as the greatest actor of all time, a revolutionary genius who reshaped modern cinema, was not, according to Duvall, a hero behind the curtain. "Yes, he was brilliant," Duvall admitted. "But he was also the most self-absorbed, destructive force I ever worked with. Someone who would sabotage an entire production just to prove he could." Their clash reached its peak on the chaotic set of The Chase, 1966, a film now largely forgotten but one that brought together Brando, Duvall, Jane Fonda, and Robert Redford. What audiences never saw was the psychological battlefield behind the camera. A power struggle so intense it left scars that would shape Duvall's craft, his discipline, and his distrust of ego-driven actors for the rest of his career. Marlon would often shift his performance from take to take, deliberately altering his delivery to make editing a nightmare, Duvall revealed. If he didn't like the director's vision, he'd intentionally sabotage other actors' scenes, claiming he was protecting the integrity of the film. I called it what it really was: professional sabotage. The tension between them finally reached its breaking point during a key scene, Duvall's biggest monologue at the time, the one that could have defined his rising career. According to multiple crew members who have since confirmed Duvall's account, Brando repeatedly disrupted the scene, making faint noises off camera during Duvall's takes. Sound subtle enough to ruin the audio but escape notice on set. After the fifth ruined take, I confronted him, Duvall recalled. He just smirked and said, "Maybe you should be stronger in your choices." That was Marlon. He'd undermine you, then make it seem like your failure. What makes this confession even more startling is how it dismantles the long-standing myth of their relationship. For decades, Duvall had publicly credited Brando as one of his greatest influences, all while privately carrying deep resentment. The two would cross paths again on The Godfather, though they never shared a scene, a production choice that, in hindsight, seems far less accidental than once believed. "I learned more from watching Marlon than anyone else," Duvall admitted. "But what I learned wasn't just about acting, it was about respect. Genius doesn't justify cruelty." This uneasy mix of admiration and contempt explains why Duvall kept silent for so long. Yet as shocking as this first revelation was, the second name on his list would prove even more unexpected, and even more personal. James Caan, competitive to the point of cruelty. The second name on Duvall's list struck a nerve in Hollywood, not just for who it was, but for the history they shared. His Godfather co-star James Caan, who immortalized Sonny Corleone alongside Duvall's calm, calculating Tom Hagen, helped create what many still call one of the most authentic brotherly dynamics ever captured on film. "Jimmy and I built that relationship on screen," Duvall admitted. "And we did it while barely speaking to each other off camera. That's acting." According to Duvall, the tension began early in rehearsals for The Godfather, when both men were jockeying for position within Francis Ford Coppola's sprawling ensemble. Duvall came in with his usual preparation and professionalism, but claimed that Caan's approach was fueled by competition, and something darker. "Jimmy was competitive to the point of malice," Duvall revealed. "He'd do anything to steal focus, wave his hands, exaggerate expressions, throw in unscripted gestures, always trying to pull the audience's eye away from whoever the scene was meant to belong to." Things came to a head during the now iconic family meeting scene, where the Corleones debate going to war with the Tattaglias. Between takes, Duvall quietly discussed Tom Hagen's mindset with Coppola, until, according to him, Caan cut in with a smirk and a dismissive jab about overanalyzing the secretary role. "That was the moment," Duvall said, "when the friendship ended before it even began. I decided then that Tom Hagen would always watch Sonny carefully, always stay a step behind, studying him. It worked, because that's exactly what a consigliere would do when dealing with a hothead like Sonny." What makes this revelation so astonishing is just how perfectly both men managed to hide their resentment. For years, Robert Duvall and his co-stars appeared inseparable, sharing laughs during press tours, celebrating anniversaries, and reuniting for countless tributes to The Godfather. In front of cameras, their chemistry felt genuine, their brotherhood undeniable. But behind those smiles lay a silent agreement. "We both knew what was at stake," Duvall later admitted. "We weren't about to let personal issues ruin something that important. So we smiled, told the right stories, and played our parts." That's also acting. It was a rare glimpse into Duvall's discipline, a man willing to bury grudges for the sake of art. Yet, the real shock came not from his clashes with Brando or Caan, but from a far more personal betrayal. "Number 3, Duvall said, pausing. "Dustin Hoffman, the credit thief who never stopped." That name stunned many. After all, Both men had risen from the same roots, two struggling actors in 1960s New York, sharing a cramped apartment and a dream. "Dustin and I were friends," Duvall recalled. "At least, that's what I believed." But friendship meant something very different to him. Their rivalry began innocently, two hungry performers chasing the same roles, until Hoffman began, as Duvall put it, borrowing his work. "I'd spend weeks crafting a character for an audition," Duvall said. "Then Dustin would walk in, using my exact delivery, word for word. When he got the part, he'd say I inspired him. That's just a fancy word for theft." The habit, according to Duvall, didn't stop once Hollywood came calling. Even during True Grit in 1969, when Duvall was shaping his outlaw Ned Pepper, Hoffman allegedly phoned him again and again, this time for tips on voice and character work for Midnight Cowboy. Both films would go on to become classics, but behind their success lingered an unspoken truth. One man's brilliance, Duvall claimed, was built on another's stolen craft. "I spent hours on those calls, helping him find Ratso Rizzo's voice," Duvall recalled, his tone heavy with disappointment. "Then I opened a magazine and read Hoffman bragging that he developed the character by studying homeless people in New York for months. Not a single word about our conversations." That, Duvall said, was the moment something in him shifted. The friendship that had once fueled their artistic growth began to rot under the weight of betrayal. But the true breaking point came when both men were considered for the lead in The French Connection, 1971, a role that would go on to make Gene Hackman a star. According to production insiders who later confirmed Duvall's version of events, Hoffman went beyond rivalry. He allegedly warned director William Friedkin that Duvall was difficult and uncooperative, citing their early theater days together. The remark, Duvall believes, cost him the part that could have defined his career. "That wasn't competition anymore," he said quietly. "That was sabotage." When he confronted Hoffman years later, the denial came swiftly, but, as Duvall claimed, "I heard it straight from Friedkin himself." Still, ever the professional, Duvall kept his resentment buried. He smiled at award shows, praised Hoffman in interviews, and never revealed what he truly felt. To the public, they remained two titans of acting, respectful peers with shared history. But beneath that surface civility lay decades of unspoken bitterness. That's why this revelation has rippled through Hollywood, because it wasn't just a feud, it was a wound hidden in plain sight. And yet, even that revelation pales beside what came next. Duvall's fourth and final confession sent shockwaves through the industry, this time aimed at a man often seen as untouchable. "Number 4, Duvall said. Robert Redford, the fraud behind the golden image." It was a name no one expected to hear. Redford, the cinematic icon, the environmental crusader, the founder of Sundance, the very picture of artistic integrity. But Duvall painted a far darker portrait. "Redford built the perfect image," he said. "The thoughtful artist, the activist, the champion of independent film. But the man I knew was something else entirely. A calculating opportunist, that's how Duvall described him. A man who treated crew members like furniture and fellow actors like obstacles in his path." Their uneasy relationship took shape during the filming of The Natural, 1984, where Duvall played the sharp-tongued sportswriter Max Mercy opposite Redford's mythic ballplayer Roy Hobbs. What should have been a professional partnership between two Hollywood veterans quickly unraveled into quiet hostility. "He'd keep entire crews waiting for hours," Duvall recalled, his voice edged with frustration. "And not because he was lost in character. He was on the phone, juggling business calls while everyone stood by on the clock, wasting daylight. That's not dedication, that's arrogance." As production dragged on, tension deepened. During key confrontation scenes between their characters, Duvall noticed a troubling pattern. Redford, he said, began lobbying director Barry Levinson to trim or cut Duvall's most pivotal moments, especially those where Max Mercy dared to puncture Roy Hobbs's heroic facade. "It became obvious," Duvall said. "He couldn't stand sharing the spotlight. Any scene where someone challenged him suddenly became unnecessary to the story." This wasn't about storytelling, it was about control. For Duvall, the irony was bitter. On screen, Redford played a legend haunted by the truth a reporter sought to expose. Off-screen, Duvall claimed, Redford was doing everything he could to bury that same kind of truth. He wanted to dominate every frame, Duvall reflected. And he succeeded, not because of talent alone, but because of influence. What stung most was the hypocrisy. The man hailed as Hollywood's moral compass, the founder of Sundance, the supposed defender of artistic collaboration, was, in Duvall's eyes, the very opposite. He built an empire on integrity, Duvall said, but the man I saw behind the camera was someone who believed collaboration only worked when he was the one in control. He'd preach artistic purity at Sundance, Duvall said, then go back to film sets demanding final cut approval and veto power over casting. The gap between his public image and reality was staggering. But nothing, Duvall claimed, revealed Redford's true nature more than their final confrontation. It happened during post-production on The Natural, when Duvall finally confronted him about his on-set behavior. According to crew members who witnessed the exchange, Redford didn't flinch. Instead, he delivered a line that would echo in Duvall's memory for decades. "You're a character actor, Bob. I'm a movie star. We're not playing by the same rules." That moment crystallized everything, Duvall later reflected. The fraud behind the golden image became impossible to ignore. "I never looked at him the same way again." And with that revelation, Duvall shattered one of Hollywood's most sacred illusions. For decades, Robert Redford had been untouchable, the embodiment of grace, intellect, and quiet integrity. But coming from another Robert, equally revered and famously blunt, this accusation hit differently. It didn't just expose one man's alleged arrogance, it challenged the entire mythology of Hollywood nobility, forcing the industry to confront the uncomfortable gap between who stars claim to be and who they truly are. In the days following Duvall's explosive interview, Hollywood found itself in chaos, part disbelief, part reckoning. Representatives for both Hoffman and Redford, the only living names on Duvall's list, issued polished, diplomatic statements expressing surprise and great respect for Duvall's legacy. Yet behind closed doors, murmurs began to spread. Industry veterans, some cautiously, others anonymously, started confirming key parts of Duvall's stories. Crew members from The Natural spoke of Redford's impatience and domineering control. A former assistant director from The Godfather admitted the tension between Duvall and James Caan was undeniable. Even Francis Ford Coppola, while careful not to take sides, offered a telling remark: "Sometimes the chemistry you see on screen comes from very complicated feelings behind the camera." And perhaps most revealing of all, according to sources close to Duvall, several high-profile actors reached out privately to thank him for finally saying what so many had whispered for years but never dared to say aloud. "He spoke the truth," one insider reportedly said. "And in this town, truth is the one thing money can't buy or protect." For his part, Duvall seems relieved rather than remorseful after finally breaking his decades-long silence. In a brief follow-up statement, he made it clear that his goal wasn't to tarnish reputations, but to restore the truth that time and public relations had quietly rewritten. "I've given 60 years to this industry and treated it with respect," his statement read. "And part of that respect means being honest about its realities, both the good and the bad." These weren't minor disagreements or passing tensions. They were sustained behaviors that shaped productions and people's livelihoods. That deserves to be remembered as part of the real history, not the polished version we all pretend to believe. As Hollywood reels from his revelations, one lingering question remains. After 60 years of silence, does Duvall still have more truth to tell? His final words during the interview hinted at exactly that. "These four stood out," he said quietly. "But they weren't the only ones. Hollywood's always been better at making myths than facing realities. Maybe it's time for a little more reality." And that, perhaps, is the heart of the matter. Beyond the headlines and shockwaves, Duvall's confessions reveal something deeper about the industry itself, how the illusion of harmony often hides years of creative and personal warfare. His willingness to finally name names doesn't just expose a few broken friendships,